Hello and welcome to Find Your Freedom, a podcast dedicated to helping you truly find freedom in all aspects of life. Join your hosts and their expert guests as they share practical tips and strategies for finding more freedom in your life. It's time to take control of your life and create the future you want. Let's find your freedom. Here are your hosts, Lenny the Boss and Omid Rad Investor.
We're starting off today with a very, very special guest. We have Bill Faeth here. He's an entrepreneur, marketing expert, STR expert, and I want to have him here, and then he can kind of share his story a little bit as far as how you as an operator can go from an entry-level entrepreneur to kind of skyrocketing your business into something bigger. So Bill Faeth, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I'm really excited to be here. This is going to be a lot of fun. It seems like it's going to be more of a conversation and a little bit less formal than some of the other podcasts that I do. I like that.
Awesome.
Yeah. So Bill, why don't you tell us a little bit by yourself, just for some of the viewers who are not familiar with you, and just a quick backstory about yourself.
Gosh. I'm a retired golf professional, and when you're retired at my young age, that means that I wasn't very good at it. I started my entrepreneurship journey when I was 17 years old and was selling t-shirts out of the back of my mom's 1984 Ford Tempo. Turned that into about $180,000 a year business with 5 of my friends selling t-shirts at 5 different high school football games. That's kind of when I think I got addicted to building businesses. I was drop shipping in 1993, bikinis, after I played the South American P.J. tour and with a family that was hand making sarongs and bikinis and stuff like that. So, about 15 years before drop shipping was a thing. Started Wild Bill's Texas Smokehouse, a restaurant, turned it into 6 and 18 months, acquired 7 months later. So my whole MO is I've never wanted to have big businesses, a lot of employees. I've done it 3 times. It's not really interesting to me. I built a $50 million company, 2 $30 million companies. I like small business. I like to have my hands in the business. I don't want to be a CEO, if that makes sense. I'm kind of a hands-on type of a guy. So I've done 27 startups. I've still own 4 of them I've turned into annuities with friends and former kids that played for me when I was a college golf coach. Stuff like that. But I believe in building annuities. It ties into my long-term retirement plan as opposed to just building and exiting and selling. And that's kind of what I'm doing as part of my short-term rental play as well. So interested to talk about that over the next 30, 40 minutes.
Man. Bill. Man, listen, when I dig into you, for one, I appreciate all the content that you provide, because it seemed like everything I take from you, I have to say, works, right? But look, you're an entrepreneur, you're a business coach, you're a speaker, Airbnb coach, unfiltered podcasts, co-hosting. I mean, all these accolades you have now, right? Give us a little bit of the journey of how did you, because looking at your resume, it's like, wow, how can I even stand next to this guy? So give us some of your ups and downs on, how you got to where you are today.
I think it all started when I got my first big brother when I was 12 years old, and he introduced me to play golf because I didn't have a father. My father abandoned my mother and I when I was 5. And I was like a regular, athlete. I excelled at baseball, excelled at soccer, excelled at basketball, although I'm the only 6'6.5" tall guy that couldn't dunk. And if you're a hoopster out there, there was a guy that I played against that literally scored 57 points on me in 18 minutes, and I fouled out, and that's when I knew I needed to stick with golf and not play basketball anymore. So the big brother thing's a huge deal in my life, right? So I didn't have a father growing up, and he taught me how to play golf, which taught me independence, which taught me that I had to, I'd have resilience. I had a mother that was a teacher who couldn't afford to take me to a country club or any of that type of stuff. So most importantly, self-drive and independence were the 2 big things I learned being raised by a lower middle class mother and through the Big Brother program. But most importantly in golf set me up to be a catalyst for the rest of my life. It took me, honestly, Lenny, probably a good 20, 25 years of being the lone wolf and having some success until I met a gentleman that, put me on his shoulders and taught me what I really needed to know in my mid 30s to late 30s, which wasn't that long ago. I'm almost 50. I almost said I'm 50. I'm not quite yet. But I mean, I kind of had this second half of my life that started when I was like 35 years old. And that's when the majority of my business success came, after I figured out I didn't need to do it by myself. And that's probably from, my father issues, not having a dad growing up. I wanted to carve my own path, to really figuring out that I need to stand on the shoulders of giants, and I need to learn from people that are smarter than me. Look, I don't have any accolades. It's just, I'm the same as anybody else that's out there. I have to buy properties the same. I have to do the same shit that everybody else does. There's nothing different. I'm not, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And I mean, I've earned, I've worked, I've scratched everything that I've had to get. My wife and I were talking about this literally, as I joked with you, of what I had to pay to get Taylor Swift tickets, because I couldn't get in the, we spent 8 hours pounding whatever that was, Ticketmaster or Visa, trying to get the tickets. And I spent $9,000 on tickets. And I'm like, I didn't tell my daughters. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I worked really fucking hard to make that money. And it just happens to be my daughter's favorite thing. It's her 14th birthday. It's on her birthday. So I'll spend a little bit more money than I normally would, to do something like that. So for me, I started in the short-term rental space. I was in long-term rentals. I built commercial space before, really by happenstance. My wife and I were on vacation. It was fall break, as a matter of fact, I think in 2015, down in Seaside, which is the 30A area of the Panhandle. And a guy I played on the South American P.J. tour with, we traveled together, and he was a groomsman, and mine and my wife's wedding, we're having lunch with him and his wife. And he said, ma'am, if you want to buy a house, how much money do you have? At the time, we had like $127,000. And my wife had like a couple of stipulations. I want to see the water, I want to hear it, and I want to smell it. Those three things. And I call him Wee Wee. His name's William Wilson. He still owns Frangista Beach Property Management in Destin, and he owned the Frangista Beach Hotel before he tore it down and built like $1 billion worth of houses and condos down there. And he said, ma'am, he called me Six Pack. You need to go to this place called Gulf Shores, which I'd never heard of before. And I said, okay, can I get her that in Gulf Shores? He's like, yeah, you can get that all day long in Gulf Shores. This is 2015. So we flew there about 3 weeks later. And the very first house that we saw 10 in one day. We put an offer on it. We paid like $625, $626 for it with that $127,000 that we had. And I went down the path of having a prop that, many times in vacation rental markets, the buyer that doesn't know anything, and I didn't know anything from anything, the real estate broker said, hey, congratulations on closing. Let me take you to dinner. Well, her broker of record, who also owned the property management company, at dinner said, hey, we can make this easy for you. Are you going to rent it? Well, yeah, that's the whole purpose. Yeah, we'll take 20% and we'll list blah, 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 blah. And after 90 days, it's the big fuck you. You're not transparent. You're not making me any money. My house is trash. The cleanings suck. You're at a 4.5 rating. And what are you doing for marketing? And they wouldn't listen to me about marketing. That was my superpower, right? And so I said, I'm going to fire you guys. I'm going to take it over on my own. And I was on like a $45,000 a year run rate for an awesome custom tier 2 property.
Wow. And
I did 98 on my own in the first 12 months. Next year I did 112. Now we're pushing into 2018. And so this is one of the secrets, right? A lot of people think, oh, Bill played professional golf. He's done all these startups. He's rich. He just laid out cash, started spitting off Benjamins to go buy houses. No, I bought it out of cash flow. It took me 2 years of saving the profit from that first house, $108,000. I bought a smaller house, like a $300,000 property, about 2 miles down the street. And then I rehabbed that, and then I sold it, right? So I did what I call a retail flip. I bought it, I held it, I bird it, then I rented it, then I sold it, and then I had like $187,000 within like 9 months after that, right? So then I took the profit from property number 1, the profit from property number 2. I had like $240,000, and then I went and I bought, another property. So I have never once had to pay a mortgage once I fired the property management company. So I've paid my expenses, and then I have not lived on my earnings. I think that's a really big thing. Unless you have to, you don't want to live on your earnings. You want to roll that back into reinvestment. And, you know, over time, probably the most important thing, I didn't have this when I first started, but when I got to property number 3, and I still had my marketing agency, I still had my online university, I was, you know, had all this other stuff that was going on. I said, you know what, I'm going to start doing this semi-pro, right? Like Will Ferrell, I'm throwing on the headband, man, get the big hair, and I'm going to be semi-pro guy. And so then I got up to like 4 properties, and then I had to get the PMS. And now it's like, holy shit, taxes are a whole different ball game. All this stuff, it's turning into a real business. And then that's when I said, you know what, I've got to start treating this like a business. And I didn't know anything about the tax benefits at that time. I knew I wanted to start growing and scaling. And it was around the time that I met one of my mentors, John Bairden, who sat me down, and I've mentioned his name many times. And he forced me and these other entrepreneurs in a forum like a mastermind to build out our life plan. I didn't have a plan. I was just chasing money, you know, at that time. And I was in my early 40s, and he's like, man, you got to have a plan. It's like playing a football game. Imagine Tom Brady and Peyton Manning going back and forth, and they throw the ball to that, you know, that guy, and he runs into that thing that has their logo on it. And then they just give the ball back to the other team. And then Brady does the same thing. There's no fucking scoreboard. There's no crowd cheering because they're watching, but they don't know what's going on. That's the way my life was. And that's the way most people's lives were. They're still that way today. For me, that changed everything. I had purpose. I had intent. And you talk about freedom. I defined retirement. That was the big thing for me. Everybody says they want financial freedom and they want to travel the world. And once I gave that a definition, once I gave that a timeline, once I knew how much it was going to cost me, and this is the huge part, both my wife and I agreed when we were going to get there, how we were going to get there, what that end game was. Now we could keep score. And when you can keep score with your spouse, that's when I developed this thing. It's the Bill Faeth Success Planner. And I don't sell this, but this is where I've tracked everything. And every Friday from noon to 4 o'clock, my wife and I hold ourselves accountable, and we track our progress to that retirement. Because retirement means something different to everybody. But if you don't have this really holistic approach of financial freedom and travel the world, it's not specific enough. So we have to lower that plane that's circling around at 30,000 feet, get it down to 10,000 feet, then get it down to 5,000 feet, and then boom, we got to put that motherfucker on the runway. Because if we don't put that thing on the runway,
let's go, baby,
we don't have anything to work towards, and we can't distill those decisions down to the things that we do every single day. That changed my life.
Wow. Bill, like, I mean, this is super impressive, and you know, you have all sorts of experiences, but I think the one that really kind of resonates with me is like the mentor piece and having a life plan. So I kind of want you to like speak on that a little bit more, because I think, like you said, not a lot of people ever plan for their future. You're just kind of going through the motions and then hoping things kind of work themselves out. And there's the other piece of the reflections and almost accountability of setting that up. So I see you got the success planner. Like, yeah, walk me through the success planner.
Things?
Yeah.
Do what?
Walk me through the success planner. And
I'm just going to give you a couple of things out of here. What are the 3 big life goals, right?
Okay.
And then most importantly, what am I going to do to achieve those goals this year? Now, when I set those life goals, so how much liquidity do I need when I retire? So for me, when I was going to retire, it was 60. I'm 49. I'll be 50 in May. So I'm like 49 3/4, like Harry Potter, almost 50, right? So I was going to retire when I'm 60. That's just over 10 years away. I had to set financial goals. How much cash flow did I need when I retire? What is my budget when I retire? So like when people say I'm going to travel the world, well, what does that mean? Are you flying coach? Are you flying first class? Are you going to Paris? Are you taking an RV around the US and Canada? We have to define that. And then we have to budget for that. Just like when we go make an investment, we got to budget for it. Then the big thing's the date. So why did I pick 60? I don't know. It was just some arbitrary number that sounded good. That, hey, my girls will be out of high school. By the way, they'll be out of college, except for probably my oldest daughter who wants to become a surgeon. She'll be just on the cusp of, finishing, her residency. Hopefully I won't have to support them anymore. And look, I budgeted $100,000 each for a wedding. I've got $500,000 in each of their 529s. So hopefully that'll pay for college. I've defined so I built out my STR portfolio. When I started building it out, it was for our retirement. It wasn't to build this massive portfolio. I switched gears in between. We bought the beach house that my wife wanted, right? We didn't buy it for an investment. Sure, you know what? $112,000 on a $625,000 investment in 2017, 18 is pretty damn good. People would scoff at that in 21 and 22, but you know what? They're going to appreciate that in 23 and 24. There's no question. So things change without that plan. I don't have a direction. So that's a reason that we meet every Friday, because if I don't know, now I'm going to retire in 4.5 years. That's when my youngest daughter graduates from high school and goes to college, right? So because we've hit the financial requirements, I'm generating more than $800,000 a year in cash flow. I've got the liquidity. I've got my debt on my STR portfolio below 30%. That's a huge one. So it's you got Robert Kiyosaki over here and Dave Ramsey over here. I live smack dab in the middle.
Yeah.
Right in the middle, right? I would actually probably lean way more towards Dave Ramsey being debt-free than I would towards Robert Kiyosaki. But I used a lot of debt leverage to get to the point to where I'm at. So I had to learn and strategically take advantage of. I'm in the process right now. Right before we jumped on this call, one of the engineers is going to one of my properties in Alabama for a cost egg. I've got 4 cost eggs going on now that I have to get completed so I can file my partnership LLC tax returns in March. It's not April. Those of you that don't keep track of that, right? And there should be around a $1.1 to $1.2 million tax benefit off my cost eggs for those 4 properties.
Wow.
I didn't know how to take advantage of that stuff till like 3 years ago. And I think about how many properties I purchased and how much money I left on the table. So everything at that end game in this planner, that the agreement me and my wife have together, it defines down to the investing strategy. So like that 30% in debt that I have on a $16 million portfolio today, I closed on $1 million property in Montana in 11 days, which is my dream lifestyle asset.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thank you. 2.5 years I've been looking for that thing. 2.5 fucking years. Every day. Zillow, Realtor.com. Got 4 agents working in 4 different markets. But I had to find the right property because it's hard to make money. Most properties in Montana don't pencil. And it doesn't work going into my end game if it doesn't at least break even as a lifestyle asset. So everything ties to the end. Timing, cash flow, debt, investment strategy. And I'm going to tell you, I met a gentleman named Reginald Booth in 2002 that fundamentally changed my life. He was the second franchisee into Pizza Hut in 1968. Wow. And he was my business partner. I was a sweat equity. He was my business partner in my Glow Golf business, the glow-in-the-dark mini golf courses and shopping malls. And he taught me many, many things. He was kind of my father figure, but most importantly, that what applies to the STR business, and this is why I do this, is I invest in clusters. There's a reason that I have 4 properties now in Western North Carolina. There's a reason that I own 3 and co-host 8 in Gulf Shores. I buy in clusters. So when they were building out, they went to over, I think it was close to 300 Pizza Huts between his partner, Bill Bennett, and Reg Booth. And he taught me that we never had a general manager at one location. He broke the model. I'm like, why? He's all, because we would put 3 within driving distance and we would have a district manager oversee 3. And then we would have an assistant manager that would be in each one of those locations. We never had to pay a GM. In 1968, that was probably around $30,000. When he finally exited his entire portfolio in 2005, he was paying around $70,000 was the equivalent for an average general manager at a Pizza Hut. His last exit was with 67 Pizza Hut. So multiply 70 G's times 67, that's going straight to the bottom line. So because of geography, weather, like at the beach, fires in the Smokies, whatever that is, and also economies of scale and leverage with my handyman and my cleaning team, I've tried to put between 2 to 4 properties, and 3 and 4 is really the ideal number in each one of the markets that I invest into.
That's Bill. Listen, that's amazing. And, some of the things I love, right? Because, you said here, you said I planned or planning, and going through the planning of your life. One time in life, I used to say, man, I want to make $10 million a year, right? And then I started to say, that doesn't make any sense. I started to fall back and say, what type of lifestyle I want to live? That's where I started. And then I said, well, what is it going to take for me to live that lifestyle? So it's fantastic hearing, how you structured, yours, because it's very similar, then tying in, your wife and going from there. Now, one of the things I continuously hear is mentors, right? I heard that you had a mentor when you was young. I'm not sure if you shared his name. Then you mentioned John, and then you mentioned Reginald Boone, right? Boone or Booth. I'm sorry, Reginald Booth.
Booth.
So tell us how important it is, and the listeners, to have a mentor.
I think, once again, I'll go back to the big brothers, big sisters, when I got my first big brother, Chris. And, he taught me how to play golf, or I should say introduced me to golf. He wasn't good enough to be able to teach me. And then I had a gentleman named Lowell Manzer, who was probably in his mid to late 60s at that time, at this like Tin Cup. It was a country club. It really wasn't a country club. My mom eked out like, $200 a month for me to have playing privileges at this place. So I could practice and play. And it was right down the street from my high school. And Lowell Manzer played golf with me almost every day. And he taught me, and, the girl I dated in high school, who went on to play on the LPGA tour and won both, how to become, she was the number 1 ranked player in the world. She was a year older than me when she graduated. I was ranked 3rd in the world when I came out in 1991. And, then I went to UCLA on a full ride, and I dropped out after 6 months because I hated the whole experience. And I dropped out to turn professional. So I gave up my full ride, played golf. And once again, kind of back to that lone wolf mentality. Hey, I'm good enough. I was a 3rd ranked player. I'm going to do it all on my own. And I struggled. And I didn't have a teacher. I didn't have a coach. And then I met a gentleman who introduced me to Dr. Bob Rotella, who was the foremost authority sports psychologist at that time. And he kind of changed everything for me. And then I got a coach, and then I was successful. And I played for about 5.5 to 6 years. And then I met my wife, and, at the time, my girlfriend, and she became more important to me than, my lifelong dream of playing professional golf for a living. And that's when she introduced me to Christ. And when I became a follower, who's the ultimate mentor, but also in business. And then very shortly after is when we met Reg Booth, and Reg Booth was a mentor for me. Jeff, my CPA, prior to Reg Booth, when I exited out of Bell Aqua Bikinis, and, Bell Aqua Swimwear, really. And he said, man, do you want to take this multiple 7 figures, or do you want to take this royalty deal? And I said, dude, I'm 23. I want the cash. He's like, no, let's take the royalty deal, and here's why. And it was one of the best financial decisions I ever made. So I believe in standing on the shoulders of giants. When I want to learn how to do something, like when I became a marketing guy in 2003, I found the best of the best. I'm in a mastermind today that I pay $100,000 a year to be a part of that mastermind with the best of the best marketers in the world. I'm not going to name them, but if I did, probably 90% of your podcasters would say, what the fuck? How do I get in that? Well, I got lucky at the right time and got invited by the right person, because I invested into a product called Product Launch Formula by Jeff Walker, the godfather of basically online marketing. He taught Ryan Dice at Digital Marketer. He taught Russell Brunson. He taught Michael Hyatt. He taught these guys how to do the online, really it's called, the online educational component. And you know what? He's the godfather. And so I surround myself with those types of people to become the best. I grew up with the best athlete in the history of the world, in my opinion. And even though he was younger than me, I learned from him. I learned from his father what he went through when I was like 15 and he was 12 and he was dominating the world. I see those things and I'm very perceptive to try to grasp on and see how that will affect me. My dream was to play basketball. And as I said earlier, when Reggie Miller threw 57 down on me, if anybody knows who Reggie Miller is, played at UCLA, played for the Pistons, 57 points, and I fouled out. And that was like in 18 minutes in the first half. And I'll never forget, I walked off the floor, fouled out, and Ron Loria, I was a sophomore, Reggie was a senior, and Ron Loria, my coach, said, "Hey, Bill, you might want to stick to golf." And that was at like one of those Christmas tournaments down in Los Angeles. And I said, "Coach, I think I'm going to. I'm done." And I literally walked off the court at the end of it was like start of the second period. And he's like, "Where are you going?" I said, "You said I'd be better at golf. I'm done. I'm just going to stick to golf. I'm going home." He's like, "You're not playing anymore?" I said, "No, I'm done."
That is funny.
And I left, and I had the pleasure of meeting Reggie years later at a function after I had got done playing golf. And I said, "Do you remember putting 57 up in this game when you were a senior in high school?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "I was that guy that I fouled out." He's like, "Man, don't feel bad because, my sister Cheryl put 100 on me in a game one time." And so I was just, it's kind of those experiences. So, I mean, my mom, I'm not going to say that we were poor, but we were lower middle class, right? But when I was playing basketball, she figured out a way to be able to afford for me to go to the John Wooden basketball camp at UC Santa Barbara. She figured out a way for me to go to the Jim Herrick basketball camp when he was a coach at UCLA. She figured out a way for me to go to the Pat Riley basketball camp so I could get better and I could excel. And, I've invested, I learned at a very young age that I had to invest into myself, right? And that's kind of the way that I've moved forward. I believe there's a former client, a good friend of mine, his name's Coach Michael Burt, and he lives about 40 minutes from here. He's a big coach online. He's a 10Xer, been on the stage of 10X with Grant Cardone, and he's the most winningest girls high school basketball coach in the history of the game. And he has a slogan that everybody needs a coach. And sure, that's a marketing slogan to sell his books and sell his whatever, but I believe he's 100% accurate. I think we all need a mentor. We all need a coach. It's why not only do I own and I profit and I host masterminds, but I'm in them as well. I'd be kind of hypocritical if I just sold them, right? So I like surrounding myself and seeking out those people that I know can elevate me, whether I have to pay for it or whether it's free. And that's who I surround myself with in my life.
That's amazing.
Yeah, wow. Like standing on the shoulder of giants. So I love that saying. And so maybe walk me through what it is that you guys, like you're in this room with people who are very high performing thought leaders. What do you guys talk about? Like what like who creates the topics and how do you even, or like even you're facilitating one, like within your own mastermind, how do you even set up these sort of topics to kind of get the most of like the room?
So I'll tell you, in the mastermind that I'm in, there's 3 of us that pay to be in. The other 7 don't pay. They're the giants, right?
Yeah.
And we fund the travel and all that type of stuff. And I've been in that mastermind for 7 years, and I will never not be in it. It's real. I mean, when you talk of people use tongue in cheek, it changed my life. My big brother Chris changed my life. Buck Owens, the country music legend, changed my life when he gave me $25,000 when I dropped out of UCLA. Basically, my mother and my grandparents disowned me. Grew up playing golf with him. Reg Booth changed my life. John Bairden changed my life. And this group changed my life. And somebody will be listening, well, how can your life change 5 times? Because I believe we all have opportunities. I don't care if you grew up in the hood, flat ass broke, or if you grew up in West Palm Beach, driving a Bentley to high school. There's a limited number of opportunities that are put in front of us. The question is do we seize them and do we take advantage of them? And I believe every human being, the good Lord gives every one of us those opportunities, but we have to see them and then we have to act on them. And I've fortunately acted on quite a few of them, to be honest with you. I don't know how I've seen them, but I've benefited. In that room, I can tell you for 3 years, I felt inferior. Because, I might have made 7 figures, but they're making 10, 20 million a year off their products. We have one person that's doing over 100 million a year. And then he built the software platform and he's doing like 200 to 300 now. It's crazy. And you feel inferior because of the money. And it took one of them to sit down and said, and he uses this term all the time. I just put it into an email. He said, we need to open up the kimono. And, one of the things when you get in a room with people that you idolize or respect tremendously, there's this natural inhibition to feel inferior, that we're not at their level. And that's okay. But it's really hard to come to terms with it, to truly open up, because you don't want to say something stupid. You don't want to act stupid. You just feel like you're going to do something crazy, and they're going to say, oh, hey, get out of here. You don't belong here. Right. But when you're with the right people, they make you feel comfortable. So I was the one that wasn't sharing the bad stuff and the stuff I really needed help with, because I wanted to put a Band-Aid over that and not show them that wound. Once I peeled that off, then they would help. And it's more, I don't know how to describe it. There is no agenda when we meet. It's like, hey, where's everybody at? What are we struggling with? What do we need help with? And, it usually starts with a dinner over some, a nice meal and some wine, and everybody loosens up. And everybody says, oh, everything's great at the beginning. But by the time we're 2 hours into dinner, it's like, okay, raise your hand if you've identified somebody that needs help that's unwilling to ask for it. And everybody raises the hand, because we've all interacted and we see some, but they're not willing to take time up from the group. And that's really how it starts. And then it just goes, right? It's like, you didn't give me a fucking list of questions. We just start, and then we just start chatting. And it's really the same thing. What I see is when you get into a mastermind that has a formula, that has an agenda, those are the ones, in my experience, that are typically not successful for the attendees, because the owner of that the facilitator, believes they've got to have a system to teach somebody. Well, that doesn't fit all. When you can sit there and sit back and let them come to you, and now I'm talking about as owning my own mastermind. When I started my first one, man, it was so regimented, boom, 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 boom. And now we just had one in Orlando with 43 of my SDR mastermind members last week. There was no agenda. And people are emailing me, hey, what's the agenda? Show up at 5, dinners at 6 on Sunday. We're leaving at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. And they fucking love it, because they're in these small groups and we have subject matter. And most importantly, they generate the user-generated content. That's the key, right? And the same thing happens in the one that I'm in and the one that I run. They tell me what they want help with. And the cool thing now is I only do like 20% of the teaching. We have other experts inside of that mastermind that facilitates, that does the teaching, and really talks and educates people through conversation. It's not PowerPoint and dictation, right? And then that's when the breakthroughs really happen.
No, that's great. Let's stick there just for a little bit, because I really think that this is that important, right? Because they say if you're the smartest person in the room, you are in the wrong room. But however, just like you mentioned, you feel nervous and you feel scared. And Bill, you have like this beautiful personality where from the outside looking in, you can go and talk to anybody, right? What tips would you give, some of these listeners where, hey, you are in this room and these are some of the things you can do to sit there and get over that fear of raising your hand to ask a question or ask someone a question for some help?
I'll answer that with a story. In 2019, I went to the Brendan Burchard Influence Conference in San Diego with 2,000 people. I had never met Brendan before. He is now a part of that big mastermind. I'd never met him. I was there with Chris, who still works with me.
So is that the Warriors Mastermind?
What's that?
The Warriors Mastermind?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, don't worry about it.
We actually don't have a name for ours. So I had my social media manager, Morgan. I had Chris, who still works for me. And there's 2,000 people in one room at the Marriott in San Diego. And Morgan and Chris had been to conferences with me. They traveled with me when I've been speaking, well before, doing this stuff. I didn't start this stuff in the SDR until 2020. And we got there and we're probably an hour, 2 hours in, and Brendan has everybody turn to the people around you, get like 5 people and do a little group activity. And I was the first guy. Oh, hey, I need to go make a phone call and walk outside because I was uncomfortable. And what I'll tell you is I'm comfortable in my comfort zone, just like anybody else. I'm not comfortable in that scenario when I didn't know anybody there. It wasn't until the end of the first day when somebody knew me from the ground transportation space that walked up and said, "Hey, aren't you that guy?" that my guard came down a little bit and I started, oh my God, somebody here knows me. I feel a little bit more comfortable now, right? So like when you see me in the STR space, I mean, it's kind of like back from Star Wars when Han Solo says, "Hey kid," started calling him big deal when he said, "I think I'm a big deal." And I'm kind of a big deal a little bit in the STR space, but you get out of that comfort zone. No, if I go to HVAC or a plumbing conference, nobody knows who Bill Faeth is. So I'm right back to just like anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to that 12-year-old kid at the first junior high dance who doesn't have a date, and he's sitting up against the wall and he's doing something. Hopefully he has a phone so he can look busy. Oh, he's going like this and there's nobody on the other line, right? Because he's nervous and he's not going to walk to the other side of the room to go ask the head cheerleader to dance with him. And he's not the star basketball or football player, so he's not in that crowd. We all feel that way, all of us, and anybody that says that they don't are full of shit. I've sat with Grant Cardone, I've been on his plane, I've been to his 10X. He feels that way when he's out of his comfort zone. We all do. So if we can recognize that, I don't believe in the visualizing everybody's naked. I want to have the assimilation that, you know what, we're all the same. There's no difference. And people look at me when they come to my conference with 1,000 people and, oh my God, you're on stage and blah, 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 blah. I am no fucking different than anybody else. I drive a truck. I wear fishing clothes. I don't wear Gucci watches and, $10,000 pants and have a private jet and all that type of stuff. We're all the same. So I think once you get comfortable with that and you truly believe it, and it takes some work to get there, then you can really, I think, slide into any scenario.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's a great answer.
Where the hands
It's like the equalizer, right? Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Okay. Yes. But I think there's that's a good equalizer. I think everybody has the same emotions, the same experiences, and just like you said, I think like Lenny and I, we met at a conference. So we met at a conference a couple of years ago, and same thing. It was just, I think he had a tendency of just like, "Hey, let's take a selfie. What's up? I'm Lenny," and then that's how the relationship kind of develops. So it's pretty basic, and kind of stick to like the foundational things of, asking questions and getting to know people. And
that's so not me. I'm not that selfie guy.
Yeah.
I got to tell you guys this really quick story. So in 2000, and the kid that I grew up with, his name's Eldrick Woods, just FYI, playing golf. So my idol was Jack Nicklaus growing up. In 2000, I'm caddying for a gentleman named Mario Tiziani, who's a good friend I used to play golf with, and Steve Stricker at the 2000 U.S. Open at Pebble Beach. It's the one that Tiger won by like 17 shots and dominated, if anybody's watching that plays golf. So my wife had never met Tiger. She flew out. Anyways, we're on the range on Wednesday. And that's when everybody's practicing, the day before the tournament starts, right? And there's these super nice, really nice porta potties, for the players only. It's not really a porta potty. It's like you're walking in like marble countertops and all that stuff. And I walk in and I'm a caddy. I'm not playing in the tournament. I'm caddying for a friend of mine. And I go to the urinal and I go to the bathroom. And as soon as, I'm not going to get too graphic, but as soon as I unzip my pants, Jack Nicklaus walks in and stands right next to me.
Pretty amazing.
He's done going to the bathroom. I zip up my pants. He's all, "Couldn't go, huh?" I just look at him. I'm like, I'm so embarrassed. I'm like, nope. I'm like, nope. He's like, "Didn't you grow up with Tiger Woods?" I'm like, "How do you know that?" He's like, "I saw you guys at Spyglass on Monday. We were over there with Tiger." And he's all, I asked Tiger who the big dude was because I thought it was, a friend of his caddies. And he's all, "No, that's a friend of mine that I grew up with." So he kind of recognized me as the big guy. And he said that because he believes that Tiger was a bigger deal than he was. But honestly, I mean, that was my idol. I'd never met him before. Mm-hmm. And I look over like, oh shit, I can't go to the bathroom. I got stage fright. But then in that 1 second, the greatest golfer of all time, my idol that I idolized, made me feel comfortable.
Wow.
So what I look at is those people that I get access to that are a way bigger deal, because I'm not a big deal, but are a real big deal. They're really good if they make you feel comfortable. So there'll be people like when you come to my conference that'll recognize you from your podcast and say, hey man, I listen to your podcast. It's awesome. It's our responsibility to make them feel comfortable. Right. And I think that's something that we as people that build social media followings, I don't like to use the word influencers, but those people that feel like we're an influencer, it's our responsibility to make them feel comfortable. So like last year when we had 1,000 people at that conference, I was so nervous walking out on stage. I've spoken to 5,000, actually 9,000 people before, because I knew the weight on my shoulders. And I told Michael this before we walked out. Our job's not to teach. Our job is to make them feel comfortable. And there's a reason at my own conference I wear shorts on stage and I wear t-shirts and stuff like that, because I want to connect at every level that I can to make people feel comfortable. If we do that, I think we're going to help lift them up, because when they feel comfortable, they can absorb more, they can learn better, and they feel more confident so they can execute at a higher level.
You're absolutely correct. You know, one of the things I like to do is when I come in, even if I make eye contact with somebody, know them or not, and they might be looking past me, I just wave. I smile. I just sit there and wave, because they might know who I am or see me at another event, or vice versa. Or maybe I'm just staring at them and I know them and from another event or something like that. And you know, when you familiarize yourself, just like you said, with someone there, it kind of makes you feel that much more, you know, comfortable. But Bill,
waving with the left hand and you got the right hand already going, ready to talking, right?
Yeah. I got this whole thing when it comes to networking. I'm gonna give it to you real quick, Bill. This is what you got to do, right? When you network with somebody, I meet Bill. I say, Bill, what's happening? We're talking. Let's exchange contacts, right? So the first thing you do is obviously you load them up inside your phone. The next thing you do is say, hey man, let's take a selfie, because look, I'm going to sit here and take 5, 10, 15, or 20 people phone numbers. I'm probably not going to remember your name, but 100% I'm going to remember your face, right? So I load you up there. I write a little synopsis on, you know, the last thing we talked about. So when I do follow up with you, because networking, most important part is follow up, I start off where we left off. So it sounds more conversational than anything me asking, you know, hey, I might need you for something, but at least we have this conversation. Hey, listen, you know, we ask all of our friends here, you know, at the Find Your Freedom podcast, what does Find Your Freedom mean to you?
Find my freedom means that I've been able to put a definition to it. I've been able to define it so I can work towards that outcome. It's kind of like what I talked about in my life plan. I was like everybody else. Hey, I wanted to have $50 million. I wanted a private jet. I'm probably not even that narrow, to be honest with you. I wanted financial freedom and travel the world. For me, I don't think you can achieve freedom until you give it a true definition. And for me, freedom is continuing to do what I do here. It's continuing to work. So my definition of freedom is not Homer Simpson, you know, or Al Bundy leaving the plant and going and sitting on the couch with my hand down my pants watching TV all day. You know, I still have to have a purpose. And so for me, freedom means probably the most important freedom, honestly, means that I've set my 2 young daughters up on a path to have a successful life. And once I've done that, then me and my wife can go enjoy the second half of our life. And there's some other things that go around that, but for me, I think it's just the definition of it, because it's different for everybody else. And we all kind of fall into the societal influence of really what the outcome should be, you know, that's accepted within society, and it doesn't need to be the norm.
I love that, Bill. I mean, that's pretty amazing as far as how you're clearly defining kind of what that looks like, and you already have kind of your plan set up, and it seems like you're already achieving a lot of the things and moving along in that direction.
So well, when you're as old as me, you better.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Oh man. So where can our listeners find you?
Bill Faeth 73 on Instagram. Every other platform on Faeth, Faeth. Build STR Wealth Facebook group, Facebook. buildshorttermrentalwealth.com, strwealth.com, STR Unfiltered podcast, STRnomics podcast. I'm everywhere. putting out about 80 pieces of content a week. So find one of them, and if I resonate with you, then follow and shoot me a DM and say hello.
Oh man, that's great. Thanks again, Bill. Hey, listen, you got to promise us you're going to be back on, man. There's so much to cover with you. Come on, give us a promise live on stage here that you
anytime. I'd love to.
My man. So what we like to do, because we don't have guests here, we have friends, right? So we do this big boom at the end, and we want to, blow out some speakers, tear down some eardrums, right? So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, in uniform, we all going to say boom.
All right, I think you're going high, so I'm going low.
All right, let's go. All right, 1, 2, 3.
Boom!
Awesome. Check this out, right? We have the great Bill Faeth on here. And one of the things that you want to do, you want to make sure that you get that success planner, because that absolutely going to change your life. Make sure you contact him, get in contact with him, follow him, because he got the right information to take you exactly where you need to go. Now, for us, we got a freebie for you, man, because we also want to help you out too. We want to make sure that anytime that you're out looking for some short-term rentals, you have what everyone needs. There's a deal analyzer and a few other things we're going to throw in there for you. So go to www.findyourfreedom.com/freedom kit. All right. Once again, findyourfreedom.com/freedom kit. And with that being said, make sure you share this episode with all your friends, all your girlfriends, your boyfriends, and then everybody. Leave us an honest 5-star review. And until the next episode, we talk to you soon. Peace.
Thanks for listening to Find Your Freedom. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're at it, please help us spread the word by leaving a rating and review and sharing the podcast with friends, family, and colleagues. Until next time, get out there and find your freedom.